Welcome to the Pub Sports Radio Ian Cameron Sports Report for Friday, November the 27th. Football Friday, six-pack time, as it always is on this show each and every Friday. Let's get right to it. We've got 6 games to break down, 3 in college, 3 in the NFL. Let's get down to business. Let's start with Maryland, Indiana, a fascinating matchup in the Big Ten to get the day started, noon Eastern. We've got Indiana 12-point favorites at home, 64 the total. Indiana in a little bit of a dubious spot for a team laying double digits in this game, coming off their first loss of the season in that heavily hyped showdown game last week with Ohio State. And give Indiana credit. It looked like multiple times in that game that Justin Fields and Ohio State were just going to run away with that football game and hide from Indiana. But Indiana kept battling, kept trying to get themselves back into the game. Michael Penix Jr. and the offense kept responding, making plays each time Ohio State came down the field and scored, and made that game extremely nerve-wracking down the stretch for Buckeyes fans. And Indiana, to be honest with you, I thought it was a very good account of themselves in that performance last week against Ohio State. We knew their defense was going to be have their hands full with Ohio State, and they certainly did. But the way they were able to move the ball against the Buckeyes, really solid on that side of the football. They were able to run it, and it was probably one of the better games, absolutely, I've seen out of Michael Penix Jr. this season. Being able to move the offense on the road against a very good Ohio State team, it's a positive. But after expending all that energy, all that effort in a game that clearly we knew was a big one for Indiana, the biggest game the program has played, from a football standpoint in years, there's that concern. Can they, bring it back again, and dial it up one more time this week against a Maryland team? I'm telling you what, the more you watch Maryland, the more dangerous they are. Let's not forget, they haven't played now for a couple of weeks due to the COVID-19 interruptions, but 2 games before before this game, the last time we saw Maryland against Minnesota and then again against Penn State, we saw a Maryland offense that was very impressive, throwing the football, running the football, creating big explosive plays down the field. Talia Tagovailoa, the younger brother of Tua, who actually looked awful in his first start against Northwestern, albeit a very good Northwestern defense. We just saw what they did to Wisconsin, which now you start to think of it. Okay, Maryland shredded Minnesota and Penn State after they looked just absolutely dreadful on offense against Northwestern. But in the games we've seen Northwestern play since that time, I think we're figured out that Northwestern's got a really good defense. So it makes this Maryland offense look even more dynamic, dangerous, and potentially problematic here in this game against the Indiana Hoosiers. And given the spot being a little sketchy for Indiana, who knows what kind of gas is in the tank, focus following just the enormous game that they had on their plate against Ohio State. There's still a lot to play for Indiana, but I'm not rushing to lay double digits in this spot with Indiana, nor do I want to lay double digits against an offense that's clearly shown a great deal of explosive playmaking ability. Their last 2 games, Maryland. You do get worried a little that Maryland's been off for a few weeks. Maybe they're not quite sharp, a little rusty in this game. But still, nevertheless, that all being said, I think there's a potential Maryland could be a very live dog in this game. If I'm betting this one, I'm looking at the Terps plus the points against Indiana. We could also see some points scored in this game. I'm still not totally sold on Maryland's defense. They did get absolutely up and down the field. Minnesota went against them. Northwestern hung a big number on them. And they did shut down Penn State, but the Penn State offense has been a disappointment all year. I don't think they'll shut down Indiana completely. So I do like the dog, and I do like the over in this game with Maryland and Indiana. Pittsburgh and Clemson in the ACC as we welcome the Clemson Tigers back to action after they did not play last week against Florida State because of Florida State bowing out of that game, which left Dabo Swinney, left his pants in a bunch, so to speak, with anger and being all upset about Florida State bowing out of that game and not playing. Nevertheless, he is playing, and his team is playing this week against Pittsburgh, and they're laying out over 3 touchdowns in this game. Although Pittsburgh's taken the money here, they opened Clemson higher than they are currently being priced. They opened as high as minus 26.5, And now we're seeing about minus 22.5 to minus 23.5 with Clemson. The total opened 55. It's up to 57 now in most spots. I think Clemson's really going to come out and play well in this game. I really do. The question is, are they going to win by this kind of margin? But when you look at this Pittsburgh team, we think of this team under Pat Narduzzi, really good on defense, but they have been challenged by some of the better teams and the better offenses on their schedule. It's not been quite that same dominant defense here for Pittsburgh. You look at their worst offensive games of the season, or defensive performances rather of the season. They gave up 31 points to Miami, 31 points to Boston College. And the only offense they faced that's even in the same discussion as Clemson in terms of explosiveness, potency, and overall ability, it's Notre Dame. And they gave up 45 points in that game. So I think it's going to be a tall order for Pittsburgh on the road here in Death Valley, an angry Clemson team. They're going to, itching to get back on the football field. Let's not forget, this team hasn't played since they lost to Notre Dame in overtime a few weeks ago for their first loss of the season. So they are just chomping at the bit, I'm sure. Clemson just cannot wait to get back on the field and play a football game, and Pittsburgh might be bearing the brunt of it here in this game. Pittsburgh, though, what's happened to their offense? What can we say to explain what's happened with Pittsburgh on the offensive side of the football? They've scored 40 or more points in back-to-back games against Florida State and Virginia Tech. Now, it coincided with the return of Kenny Pickett, who was a huge upgrade from Joey Yellen, who was just not very good, backing up and taking the place of Pickett when he was injured. So that has definitely helped out this Pittsburgh offense, the return of Kenny Pickett, no question about that. I think Pittsburgh's going to be able to do a little bit of damage here offensively themselves. Look, Clemson's given up 28 or more points back-to-back games against Notre Dame and Boston College. Their defense doesn't look quite as good as it was last. They're still a good defense, don't get me wrong, Clemson, but it feels like they need to score points this year more in order to win games, like they did against Boston College, like they did against Notre Dame. They didn't shut down Notre Dame, Clemson. They only won that. They were only in that game, rather, and had a chance to win it because DJ Uiagalelei was outstanding at quarterback for them in that game. So I have questions about Clemson's defense, at least enough questions to think Pitt can get on the scoreboard for about 21, 24 points. And then I think you can easily get Clemson toward 35 to 40 points in this game, given the fact we've seen Pitt give up 31 to Miami, 31 to BC, 45 to Notre Dame. You got to think Clemson's going to be closer to what Notre Dame got against this Pittsburgh defense, get into the 40s. Pitt can score enough to send that game over the total. I like the over here. It opened pretty low in my opinion. 57, I think there's still a little value. Also worth noting, 6-0 to the over, by the way. Pittsburgh, their last 6 games. Clemson, 4-0 to the over, their last 4 games. So we've got 2 teams trending over the total. If this line trickles down further, it's 22.5 now. I don't think it'll get down to as low as 21, but even if it stays put at 22.5, I might have to go against this little movement down to Pittsburgh and take Clemson, because I do think they might burst this game open here, wide open, blow it open here against this Pittsburgh team. All right, third and final game. You know what game we have to talk about, the Iron Bowl, of course. Auburn, Alabama. We've got Alabama here, 23.5 to 24.5 point home favorite, 62.5, 63 the total in this game. A lot of points to lay if you want to back the Crimson Tide here, no question. But this is not a I want to get in Alabama's way spot for me. It's not. They lost to Auburn in this game last year. It kept them out of the playoff. They will remember that. They have remembered that. And I think they might be able to pay Auburn back. I cashed a top play winner. One of my top plays in college football last week was Auburn minus 10 against Tennessee. And if they played anyone but Tennessee, who shot themselves in the foot, made mistakes, Jarek Guarantano screwing up again like he has pretty much all season at quarterback for the Volunteers, I'm convinced that if Auburn had played anybody other than Tennessee last week, they wouldn't have covered. They may not have even won that game, to be honest with you, straight up, let alone covered. I was very fortunate to get out of there with a victory with Auburn laying the points last week. Very fortunate. I wouldn't call that a complete right side handicapping job on my part. That's for sure. Got a lot of fortuitous luck on my side with that one. I wasn't impressed with Auburn last week. That was a down in the dumps, dysfunctional, bad Tennessee football team, and they're basically struggling for dear life to pull away from that Tennessee team last week. Bo Nix didn't impress me. A couple bad mistakes. The throwing, he was not accurate with the football. They didn't even run the football, Auburn, as much as with as much success as I thought they would last week against Tennessee. So if they're not 100 times sharper and crisper with their execution in this game against Alabama, they could get eviscerated by this angry, focused Crimson Tide team looking to not only make state, like last week was a statement, in my opinion, that Kentucky, a pretty solid defense, or at least they were. I'm not sure they have been this year, but the fact that you played Kentucky, you have this huge rivalry game on deck, and you didn't just dominate and beat Kentucky, you completely humiliated and embarrassed them and annihilated them 63-3 last week. Mac Jones and this offense, they're showing everybody what they're capable of. Hell, Jalen Waddle's been injured for them, and they still have been able to just rack up the points, get playmakers, move that ball down the field, quick strike offense. That could be trouble for Auburn. I think Auburn will put some points on the board, but the problem is if they get behind by 3 touchdowns or more, Bo Nix in the offense all year is not that light it up quickly and get back into the game quickly type of offense. So it's a lot of points. It's not a bargain to back Alabama. That's why I'm lukewarm to actually lay the points, but there's no way I would back Auburn here. It is Alabama or pass clearly for me in this game. And the over probably is in play at 62, 62.5, 63 in this range it's at now, because you can envision Alabama getting into the 40s. I don't think Auburn can stop that from happening. They scored 40 pretty much against everybody this year. But I do think Auburn can get you 20, 21, and there you go, right close to the total, and have a chance probably to see this game just maybe creep over the total. I could see it being 45-21. That's a final score that makes a lot of sense. 48-21. I could see something along those lines in the Iron Bowl. But yeah, it's a lot of points to lay with Alabama. But in this spot against this Auburn team, which has just not been all that impressive to me from the beginning of the season, this is not a spot where I'm looking to go against Alabama. All right, there's your college football half of the Friday football six-pack. Time to turn our attention to NFL football on Sunday. Let's break down 3 of the marquee games taking place this Sunday in the NFL. We'll start with Tennessee and Indianapolis. We've got the Colts 3-point home favorites, 51.5 the total in this game. Rematch of a game on Thursday Night Football just a few weeks ago. A game that was close until halftime, and then Indianapolis just ran away with it in the second half. Phillip Rivers and the offense moved the ball against a bad Tennessee defense. It was actually not a great night for Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, and the Titans offense. And then, of course, special teams errors really cost Tennessee in that game and allowed the Colts to pull away and just take the game over in the second half. Indianapolis, they're a little bit of a thorn in my side, because I remember betting Tennessee in that first game between these two teams. I was on Green Bay last week against Indianapolis, and that's twice now they burned me. And I'm probably going to be stubborn and probably go with Tennessee here. In fact, I did take Tennessee when they were 3.5. The number's down to 3 now. Look, Tennessee, a really good road win in overtime against Baltimore, and they wore down the Ravens' defense as the game went on, Derrick Henry especially. I'm still not buying Indy's defense in terms of, yeah, their numbers all season look great. They look statistically like a top 5 NFL defense. But again, last week against Green Bay, they got torched a little bit. And it'll look in the second half to some people like Indianapolis's defense. They made the adjustments. Look, they shut down Aaron Rodgers and the Packers in the second half. But Green Bay shut themselves down. They missed wide open throws. They had some suspect play calling. They had a receiver wide open on a critical 4th and 1 for Green Bay in the fourth quarter. And Aaron Rodgers does something he rarely does. He just missed the guy. Well, he was wide open in the flat, and he completely missed him. I wouldn't call that a product of good defense by the Indianapolis Colts. It was just a flat-out whiff, in my opinion, by Aaron Rodgers in that scenario. So Indy's defense still has some proving ground to me. I like the divisional dogs, especially the divisional dog that lost the first meeting like Tennessee did. I think Tennessee can go on the road, win this one, but the 3.5 points as an underdog for a little cushion is a nice one to have. As far as the total goes, I could see another over with Indy just like last week against Green Bay. When Indy plays a capable offense, I don't trust their defense as much. But on the same point in time, you've got this Titans defense that's still very much a defense that's hemorrhaging yards, hemorrhaging big plays on a weekly basis. And I will give Phillip Rivers some credit in the fact that he's not making as many mistakes the last few weeks. And this Colts offense is moving the ball, and he is moving the offense, Rivers, these last few games. You got to give him credit for that. So I do think this game could get up and over that total. And of course, weather a non-factor indoors at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis. Next game up on the slate, we've got a pretty interesting one here in the NFC West. San Francisco 49ers, LA Rams. We've got the Rams 6.5, 7-point home favorites in this game. Be careful of this spot for the Rams, because this is classic NFL betting situation right here, in my opinion, which is why I will not be on the Rams in this game. And I absolutely lean San Francisco. Doesn't mean I'm going to be on the 49ers, but I can tell you right now, it'll be 49ers plus the points, or I don't bet the game as of right now. Everybody's going to love the Rams. Look at that performance. They just beat Tom Brady and the Bucs, and it was a great game. Don't take anything away from them. They played well. The defense got after Tom Brady, just like every team with a good defensive line has been able to rattle Tom Brady and the Bucs offense this year. And it was just another example of, the Rams being able to do that to the Tampa Bay offense. But now they're on a short week, coming off that huge win. And you've got San Francisco lying in wait, rested, off a bye week, and look out, getting some key cogs back, in the line. You get Deebo Samuel at receiver, a couple other receivers coming back. The running back group with Tevin Coleman and Raheem Mostert and company is getting healthier and could be all fully intact and healthy and ready to go for this game. There's a lot to be excited about going into this matchup here if you're the San Francisco 49ers. Now, obviously, it's been a frustrating season. Up till this point, it's been a disappointing season. Injuries have played a huge part in it, but it's a divisional game for San Francisco. They don't seem like the kind of team that's going to mentally tap out, even though making the playoffs is an uphill battle for them at this stage. But to me, it sets up well here for San Francisco to have a pretty good effort here, even with Nick Mullins at quarterback. Obviously, it's still him starting at quarterback with Jimmy Garoppolo still out indefinitely, but Nick Mullins, I think, with the extra time, this is a situation where you've got Kyle Shanahan and a good offensive mind and play caller on your side to have extra time to prepare against this Rams defense. And I think he needs it, because the Rams defense has certainly been a problem. It's been a terror in recent weeks. Malcolm Floyd, Aaron Donald on that defensive line have just been a handful. But you've got, just from a situational standpoint, you couldn't get a better situation, I think, for the Niners, and you probably couldn't find a much more dubious, tricky spot for the Rams. Huge win, Monday Night Football, beating Brady and the Bucs. Let's not forget, the Rams lost to Brady in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, and a lot of those players are still on this team. Goff, Donald. There's a bunch of Rams players that felt the sting of that loss, so that was an even bigger win from that standpoint. It's just not the spot I'm looking to lay this kind of number with the Rams. I'd expect San Fran to show up here, and wouldn't surprise me if they give the Rams a game in this one. All right, we wrap up the six-pack and the NFL portion of it with, we got to talk this game, Brady versus Mahomes one more time. Kansas City Chiefs, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We've got Kansas City 3.5 point road favorites, 55.5, 56 the total in this game. Tampa Bay is that, to me, I don't want to say they're an easy team to handicap, because there's nothing easy about sports betting. I know it's a grind every single day, every single week, every single month, and every single sport. I know it's a grind. So I don't want to say it's easy, but Tampa Bay to me is a team that you can figure out what the key element is to handicap with them. Are they facing an above-average defense, and in particular, an above-average defensive line? I don't know how many times I've said that now on shows this season regarding the Bucs. If they're playing a team like the Saints, a team like the Bears, a team like the Rams, who are all the teams that the Bucs have lost to this season, they all have pass rushes. They all have defensive lines that can collapse the line of scrimmage. They all can get after the quarterback. And those are the teams and those are the defenses that Tom Brady and the Bucs have lost to and not played well against this year. Are the Kansas City, now you got to ask yourself, are the Kansas City Chiefs in that category? Do they have a Chicago type pass rush or a defensive front, or a New Orleans type pass rush and defensive front, or a Rams defensive front? I didn't see it last week against the Las Vegas. Maybe they have it. I sure as hell didn't see it last Sunday night against the Las Vegas Raiders. Derek Carr had all day. He was sitting back there with time for seconds on end to throw the football down the field against Kansas City. And that was with Andy Reid and the Chiefs off a bye week. And they couldn't design a better defensive game plan than that. The Raiders went up and down the field the whole game against that Kansas City defense last week. And they only won the game because, well, they got bailed out by you-know-who, Superman again, Patrick Mahomes, right down the field with the final minute of the game to put the Chiefs ahead with that game-winning touchdown drive. But it was a game where you could easily say the Raiders deserved to win it. Their offense certainly did. Derek Carr and the Raiders moved the ball up and down the field the entire football game against Kansas City. There was no pass rush, none, zero. So if there's no pass rush last Sunday, and if there's no pass rush this Sunday against Tampa Bay, then Brady and the Bucs offense becomes dangerous, and they can do things and they can have success, because every single game where Tampa Bay has put up the big points and had the great offensive performances have been against teams with lacking a pass rush and lacking a consistent defensive game and performance. And certainly I think we've seen that a few times this year. We've already seen that a handful of times this year with this Tampa Bay team. You get them against a team that lacks a pass rush. That's when Brady has time, is accurate, makes plays down the field to Godwin and Evans and Brown and Gronk and all the weapons he has. I think Kansas City, look, they've got a Super Bowl caliber offense, and their defense at times this year has certainly stepped up. It better not be the Las Vegas game last week version of the Kansas City defense here in this game, because, with Tampa Bay off the loss, and I think in a little bit of an angry mood off the loss, if Brady's got time to find his receivers down the field, he can find them. But can he find them way down the field? Because one of the stats that was pointed out after the loss to the Rams last week was that he was, I think, 1 for 9 or something or he's on a run of 1 for 9 throwing the football, 20 passing plays of 20 yards or more. So it tells you Tom Brady with the deep ball that's still not a consistent part of his arsenal right now. He's just having a tough time getting the deep passes and incorporating that successfully as part of the offense. And will they be able to do that here against Kansas City? That remains to be seen. But regardless of Tom Brady short throws versus Tom Brady deep balls, which is where he's struggling, they will be able to move the ball if the Chiefs' pass rush is as non-existent as it was last week against the Raiders. On the flip side, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs' offense is probably not going to be stopped by Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay's defense is good. It's better than it's been the last few years, but I'm still concerned. The last few games, Carolina moved the ball for a whole half against them. They had no answers for the LA Rams and Jared Goff last week. The Saints up and down the field with Drew Brees on the Sunday night game where they bombed the Bucs 38-3 that night. Defense against some capable offenses and balanced offenses, and Chiefs are balanced now. This is not just we throw it all over the parking lot with Mahomes. We've got Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Le'Veon Bell, a duo in the backfield and Andy Reid's committed to the run. This has been a pass-run balance we've seen this season with the Kansas City offense. This is a tricky matchup here for Tampa Bay. I think you know where I'm going. I think that in this game, I look over the total, and I would bet against Tampa Bay in games where I worry about the pass rush of the other team. But in a game like this, where I've got a Chiefs defense where I'm not fully confident, I'm going to get a great game from them and a pass rush that's going to show up. In a game like this, if this number gets 3.5 across the board, which it looks like it will, I'm interested in Tampa Bay here, plus 3.5. This is a huge game for them. It really, really is. I mean, they don't want to lose 2 in a row. They're now probably falling way behind, not only pretty much done in terms of catching New Orleans for first in the division, but now they're in a spot where if they want to get a wild card spot, they've got to stop the bleeding. You can't lose another one like this, or else you're really now getting into a position in the standings where we just got to worry about hanging on to a damn playoff spot at this point. So it's a very important, imperative game for the Bucs. I think their offense will have way more success than they did the other night against the Rams, because obviously I don't think much of the Chiefs pass rush compared to the Rams pass rush, which has been the key against Tom Brady this year. So I think at plus 3.5, Tampa Bay is a consideration for me. I mean, it's not an easy decision for me to ever bet against this Kansas City team, but hey, they didn't cover last week against the Las Vegas Raiders. They won, but they did not get the point spread cover in that game. And, now they're on the road as well for a second straight week, which is always more difficult doing these back-to-back road trips in this COVID-19 world we live in. Tampa Bay might be live here. I would lean home dog. Bucks at around plus 3.5 are out there, especially at some of the Las Vegas sports books. And certainly this total's gone up, and I understand why. 55.5, 56, 31-28 is absolutely a final score that seems very possible in my mind, which would get you up and over the total. But interesting game, fun one to watch. I'm sure it'll be on Sunday with Kansas City and Tampa Bay. All right, that will wrap up this Friday edition of the Pub Sports Radio Ian Cameron Sports Report for November 27th. Another great week of shows. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. Reminder, Pub Sports Radio YouTube channel. This weekend, we've got the college football closing time show at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific on Saturday. Connor Mack and I getting you ready for the college football card. Sunday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific time. Connor, me, and Ski Profit with the NFL closing time show. So make sure you join us for that right here this weekend on the Pub Sports Radio YouTube channel. And make sure you're checking out everybody. Mo and the UFC crew, the shows they do, the Talking Hands crew. They collaborate on stuff regarding UFC. Great content. Check it out on this channel. Check out Razor Sharp Picks and the guys that are doing the horses. And they're doing a good job with the horses too. If you're checking out their shows, I think they're cashing some of these exactas and trifectas and making you some money. So check out the horse show, betting live shows that are happening on this channel as well. Lots of content, lots of stuff to keep you entertained and hopefully keep some money in your pocket as well if you're tuning into the betting related content on this channel. So all of it daily right here on the Pub Sports Radio YouTube channel. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. Have a great weekend. Remember, Pub Sports Radio, Ian Cameron Sports Report. We'll be back on Monday. We're on Monday to Friday with this show. We'll be back on Monday with the next edition. Have a great weekend. Good luck on the NFL and in college football this weekend. And I'll see you again right here on Monday for another edition of the Pub Sports Radio Ian Cameron Sports Report.